All right, let's dive right into this explainer. If you're bringing a chameleon home, your very first move is choosing the right enclosure. And guys, this is a setup choice that is literally life or death for your new pet. Today, we're cutting through all the noise and pulling the exact blueprint for success directly from the Krawlo 2026 guide. You know, the deadliest mistake a new owner can make actually goes against almost everything you see when you walk into a standard pet store. You see rows and rows of beautiful terrariums, right? And it's totally natural to assume that what works for a snake or a gecko works for all reptiles. But for a chameleon, making the wrong choice here is absolutely catastrophic. Buying a glass tank, yup, it is a fatal error. While glass might be perfect for a leopard gecko, for a chameleon, it's incredibly dangerous. Why? Well, because a chameleon's enclosure isn't just a cage to keep them from running away. It is a highly complex, critical life support system. Think about it. Chameleons don't just roam around your living room like a dog or a cat. This single enclosed space has to perfectly replicate the complex jungles of Africa and the Middle East. It has to handle thermoregulation, providing both warm basking spots and cooler areas for them to regulate their body heat. It has to manage ventilation, which is massive. It handles daily hydration and humidity, provides security with dense foliage, and safely supports UVB exposure. If your setup fails at literally any one of these, you are looking at severe stress, illness, and some massive vet bills. So, rule number 1 of chameleon real estate: vertical space absolutely trumps horizontal space. These are arboreal, tree-dwelling lizards. They naturally want to go up. So when you're shopping, floor space means almost nothing compared to vertical height. A tall enclosure allows them to climb, which is their main form of exercise, and lets them self-regulate their temperature by moving closer to or further from the heat lamps at the very top. So what does that actually look like in practice? If you're keeping an adult veiled panther or Jackson's chameleon, which are the most common in the pet trade, this number right here is your gold standard blueprint. 24 inches long, 24 inches wide, and 48 inches tall. That is 4 feet of vertical climbing space, which gives them plenty of room for that essential temperature gradient and a really complex network of branches. Now, sure, you could start a juvenile chameleon in a smaller enclosure, like a 16 by 16 by 30 inch cage. But here's a highly cost-effective pro tip straight from the experts. Buy the adult size immediately. Yes, starting a baby in a massive cage can sometimes make it hard for them to hunt their food, but you solve that by simply furnishing the lower section super densely with extra vines and plants so they feel secure. This way, you only buy one enclosure for their entire life, saving you cash and saving your pet the stress of a big move later on. All right, let's move into our next section, the great debate: screen versus glass. When we break this comparison down, screen enclosures are the undisputed industry standard for about 95% of keepers out there. The mesh, usually aluminum or PVC frames with vinyl coated wire, offers just unbeatable superior airflow. It's lightweight, it's easy to clean, and the mesh gives the chameleon even more surfaces to climb. Glass enclosures are really only suited for extreme desert climates, and even then they require heavy modifications like computer fans just to force air circulation. Because the absolute fatal flaw of glass: it traps the air. Chameleons require regular misting, and in a glass tank, that creates stagnant, warm, humid air. That is basically a petri dish for bacteria and fungus, leading directly to severe upper respiratory infections. On top of that, glass causes reflections. These guys are highly territorial, and constantly seeing their own reflection causes chronic, severe stress because they literally think another chameleon is constantly challenging them. Now, there is a small caveat. If you happen to live in an incredibly dry climate where a full screen cage lets all your moisture escape immediately, a hybrid cage is a fantastic compromise. These usually have solid PVC or glass sides but retain a screen top and a screen front door. It balances humidity retention, still gives you decent top ventilation, and hey, it stops overspray from ruining your drywall. But for most beginners, an all-screen enclosure is still absolutely the safest route. Let's move on to transforming that space in Section 2, creating a vertical world with branches and plants. So you've got your giant 4-foot screen frame, but right now, well, it's just an empty box. We need to turn that into a dense, secure jungle where your pet can thrive. Foliage is quite literally life for them. It provides hiding spots, catches drinking water, and live plants naturally boost the ambient humidity. But you have to stick to safe, non-toxic options because chameleons will sometimes take a bite out of a leaf. The Krawlo guide highlights sturdy, safe choices like pothos, ficus benjamina, schefflera or the umbrella plant, and hibiscus. You can use fake silk plants for sure, but live plants really elevate the whole ecosystem. Here's how you actually design their highway system inside the cage. First, mix up those branch diameters.
Use things like sandblasted grapevine or bendable vines so their feet get different grips. Second, create multi-directional paths, horizontal, vertical, and diagonal. Third, and this is absolutely vital, place a dedicated basking branch directly beneath your heat and UVB lights, letting them get within 6 to 12 inches of the bulbs. And finally, fill about 50 to 75% of the cage with foliage. Ideally, your chameleon should never even have to touch the floor to get around.
Next up, let's talk about essential life support systems. Because a beautiful interior means absolutely nothing with the right climate control. And we have to start with a strict, non-negotiable rule. All lights must sit on top of the screen lid. Never place heating or lighting elements inside the cage where they can get burned. And this brings us to a really stark reality. Without proper UVB lighting, your chameleon will develop metabolic bone disease. It's a tragic, crippling condition. They need UVB rays to synthesize vitamin D3, which lets their bodies absorb calcium. Without it, their bones just become incredibly soft, fragile, and malform. This is exactly why you have to completely ignore those cheap, compact, or coil bulbs you constantly see at the pet store. Those coil bulbs create this intense, laser-like beam of UVB that doesn't cover the cage and can actually cause eye damage. Instead, you've got to install a linear T5 high-output UVB lamp like a Reptisun 5.0 or 10.0. This is a long tube that sits right across the top of the cage, giving a wide, safe, and even spread of that essential radiation. Okay, so the lights are on. Now we need to talk about water. Hydration is a really unique challenge here because, well, chameleons are kind of divas. They generally do not recognize standing water. Put a bowl at the bottom, they're going to ignore it completely. In the wild, they lick morning dew and rain droplets right off the leaves. To replicate that, you'll need to heavily hand mist the enclosure 2 to 3 times a day. Or save yourself the hassle and invest in a premium automated system like the Mist King, which runs on a perfect schedule. But all that daily misting brings us to the drainage dilemma. Where is all that water actually going? If it just pools at the bottom, you end up with a swampy, bacterial-filled mess. This is why bare bottom setups using just the PVC floor tray that comes with good cages are heavily recommended for beginners over dangerous loose soils or bark, which harbor bacteria and can cause impaction if swallowed. You want to drill holes in that PVC floor and let the water drain out into a separate tray, or even set the whole cage up over a 5-gallon bucket to safely catch the excess water. And that brings us to our final verdict and top picks. So let's reveal the ultimate piece of gear that ties all of the science, sizing, and safety perfectly together. According to all the data from the 2026 Krawlo guide, the definitive top pick is the ZoomMed Repti Breeze XL. It hits that golden 24 by 24 by 48 inch dimension perfectly. It's got that lightweight aluminum and PVC frame with the essential vinyl-coated mesh, giving you the exact maximum airflow your pet requires. It is the industry standard for a very good reason. So, here's the final question. Are you ready to ditch the myths and build a habitat that truly lets your chameleon thrive, rather than just survive? Getting this right definitely takes some effort, but setting up a vibrant, well-ventilated jungle is so incredibly rewarding when you see your pet healthy, active, and firing up those amazing colors. We've covered the core blueprint today, but there is so much more to dig into. For the complete guide, exact temperatures, and links to all the top-rated gear, head over to the Krawlo blog right now. Ultimately, it leaves us with this thought. When we bring a wild animal into our homes, are we just keeping a pet, or are we taking on the responsibility of becoming Mother Nature herself? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and happy habitat building.